Welcome to On the Pen. I'm your host, Dave Knapp, man on the Manjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Manjaro, Zepbound, Compound, that pen. It's what we talk about here at OTP, and we cover obesity medicine news from the patient perspective. That's what we do here. We're building the first patient-centered obesity medicine news platform that exists for people who have been so marginalized. And we just want to empower you with information to just go have greater conversations and ultimately lead to better health. You know, one of the things that I woke up this morning, I got to hear from you all what you think. This is the mind of a creator, entrepreneur, or just somebody who's flat out obsessed with what they do. But I woke up this morning with a new tagline. I'm going to float it out there. We always say obesity medicine news from the patient perspective. And we talk about conversations that empower you, all those things. But this is the tagline I woke up with: obesity medicine news that moves the needle. Obesity medicine news that moves the needle. We'll just float it out there and see what you all think, if we should replace that or not. But anyway, good to have you here this morning. There is some breaking news. Now, this is a story that we covered a while back. This is maybe a couple of weeks old at this point, where the FDA talked about offering a new fast track for drugs to be approved. So what does that mean? Well, right now there is already a fast track designation. We saw this actually with Zepbound. These drugs are fulfilling a need that is largely unmet, and they sort of align with our nation's priorities of fighting obesity. And so the fast track that is available now takes the approval process from 10 to 12 months. That's once the phase 3 clinical trial ends. Then shortly thereafter, within a few weeks or a month or two, the drug company submits all that data to the FDA for approval to be able to bring it to market. That process takes 10 to 12 months. If you get the old fast track designation, that takes about 6 months, 6 to 8 months for approval. Now, what the FDA is floating around now is basically a priority fast track that would allow these drugs to get approved in as little as a month. So sort of mobilizing the FDA's resources to put priority on certain medication. Now, that's where today's news comes in, and this has major impacts with the potential for the timeline and the cost of future obesity medicine, especially the one that I think about is Retatrutide, because it sort of falls in the window where this could actually be affected. We actually talked about the cost and timeline of Retatrutide on a live that our friend Sabrina did last night on TikTok. And so this, I feel like we spoke this news into existence. And so we're going to cover it. Get your questions ready too, because we will do a question and answer session at the end here. I'm going to make myself available for a few minutes if you have questions or comments or things you wanted to talk about. But the FDA commissioner, his name's Marty Makary. He's actually, interesting thing about Marty Makary is he's running the FDA now, and he used to actually be the chief medical officer of a telehealth company called Sesame Health. And Sesame Health has been a company that has actually provided obesity treatments and even compounded obesity treatments. So he's somebody who's uniquely familiar with the landscape of kind of where everything is in terms of obesity medicine, scarcity, and the need for improving access. And he went on Bloomberg today and floated an idea about this whole fast track designation that I think is worth covering. And it would have been unthinkable even a year ago. This was on no one's radar. He said that the agency is going to leverage this process to speed up approvals, and he's going to put a priority for companies that agree to match their U.S. drug prices to what they charge overseas. Now, this bleeds into a policy that the Trump administration announced. It was an executive order called Most Favored Nation policy. And if you don't know much about that, that's all right. I'll give you a quick flyover. The Most Favored Nation is basically just this idea that the U.S., in partnership with U.S. drug companies, will go to other countries that pay much less for the list price of medications than we do. And they'll say, hey, you need to bring your prices up to closer you basically need to bring your prices up on these medications so that the United States can pay less, right? Because right now our list price for these drugs is much, much higher than what people pay in other parts of the world, right? And you could parse out, what your thoughts are on all this, and everybody has opinions on this. But at the end of the day, this would equate to cheaper medications for American citizens, right? And so the government sort of leveraging their power with trade and other levers that they can pull to coerce other nations to pay more, so that the United States doesn't pay such a disproportionately high amount for prescription drugs. Right. And so essentially what we have here from Dr. Marty Makary, he says for pharmaceutical companies that willingly comply with this and basically they're just good faith actors that bring medicines to market, they will actually be the ones that are first in line for this fast track approval for these medications. So if they agree to stop overcharging Americans for the drug they're bringing into market, they promise to offer the drugs at the same price they do in, say, Canada or the UK, excuse me, and the FDA would move their application sort of to the front of that line. No more 10-month review timeline. We're talking like 1 to 2 months, and that can potentially affect the timeline. And obviously, it's an incentive to the pharmaceutical companies, because having that drug out earlier means that they're able to gain more market share, more revenue. And so this could be a game changer. And I think it just could work. It could work. So what does this mean for the community? Let's talk a little bit about Retatrutide. Now, we had a video on sort of this topic a few days ago, but I think that it's worth reiterating that the timeline for Retatrutide right now is May of 2026 is when the first clinical trial for obesity ends for Retatrutide. And that means that the timeline, they will have the fast track designation for Retatrutide, the normal one that'll take 6 to 8 months. So you go 6 to 8 months from May of 2026. You're at the end of 2026, early 2027 for the timeline. Now, if Eli Lilly would agree to a most favored nation's price for Retatrutide, that means that you may see Retatrutide as early as July, maybe, of 2026, rather than 6 months down the line. So that could be a huge benefit, both in terms of how soon we see these new treatments to market, because I know many of you are like me. You're sitting in this boat where the current medications aren't meeting your medical needs the way that they do for other people. I think of Retatrutide and these glucagon receptor agonists, because that's really the differentiator between Retatrutide and tirzepatide, is that Retatrutide adds this glucagon component, which has massive impacts on liver health and metabolism outside of what you see with the current medications. And so I think of even people living with liver disease, where there are not really any treatments out there that can actually reverse the liver disease stages, where Retatrutide and even tirzepatide to some extent have been shown to actually reverse fibrosis. That might not mean much to people who don't know about liver health, but basically there's stages to liver failure, right? In liver disease, you basically have the first stage, which is like fatty liver, which can lead to scarring. That scarring is called fibrosis. And there's like 4 stages of fibrosis, which ultimately leads to cirrhosis. And we all know how that story ends for people. It's a very, very, the word that comes to mind is just disgusting way to die. Just a horrible way for people to go. If you've ever known or loved somebody who's died that way, it's not the way that you would choose to go. And actually what these drugs are being shown to do is actually reverse the stages of fibrosis, meaning that it heals, the liver begins to heal, and fibrosis was once thought to be irreversible. And so you talk about the game-changing nature of drugs like Retatrutide. There are others with the glucagon component. There are survodutide, which will come to market probably sometime in 2020, early 2027 as well, maybe late 2026. I'm not sure when that trial ends off the top of my head, but similar timing to Retatrutide. You have, I believe, pemvidutide is another one that may use glucagon. And we just talked about another one that's entering phase 1 trials in early 2026, which is a triple agonist like Retatrutide that's also going to be available in a pill PN 477, I think was the name of that. You'll have to go back and check my Substack. We just covered this the other day. So there's a lot of hope on the horizon. And the amazing thing that I see from all of this is that we could see these medications sooner, and we could potentially see them more cost effective. So that is one of the things that I get excited about just when we talk about these topics of access, because not a lot has meaningfully changed in terms of the cost and accessibility of prescription drugs for chronic disease. I've been fighting this battle for my wife for now 20 some years. She has rheumatoid arthritis. She was diagnosed at 10 years old, and it has always been a arduous process each and every year to make sure that she can maintain the drugs that she has that help to keep her chronic disease at bay. And now living with type 2 diabetes and obesity as an adult myself, fighting those battles for myself, there's just nothing that's meaningfully changed in the last, well, that entire 20 years outside of the ACA, which at least did make it so that you couldn't lose coverage for a chronic disease, which was obviously a huge benefit to people like my wife who live with chronic disease. So that's what I got in an update today. I hope that you found that video interesting. I hope that you found this content helpful. And if you did, I hope that you'll do me the favor just by subscribing to the channel, hitting the bell for notifications, and dropping a comment and letting me know. All of those things help us to continue to not only like push this video out. That's not the concern. The concern is we're trying to grow on the pen every day into a trusted obesity medicine news platform. And you're helping us get there. You're the whole reason we have this studio. Did you know that this is a studio now? This is outside of my home. We have an office. It's amazing. And that's all because of you. And I really appreciate you all. So let's jump to some of the questions, and I'm going to be happy to take questions as you guys have them. Mike says, why would they rush it? Is something else going to get a leap ahead of Reta? Why would Eli Lilly rush Retatrutide to market? What's their incentive, I think, is the question there, Mike. I think that really it comes down to you see the benefit of being the first to market with a novel drug. And while there are other obesity treatments on the market, Retatrutide will be the first triple agonist and the first one to get results that rival those of bariatric surgery in the clinical trials, like meaningfully. Not only that, but we talked about the liver health. Being first to market with that, say before Boehringer Ingelheim comes to market with their GLP-1 glucagon, survodutide, is of huge value. Not only that, but the additional 6 months that they get to basically be. So you think about the timeline. I'm trying to gather my thought here. You think about the timeline that drug companies are given exclusivity on their drugs. Most people think, well, they get the patents. The patents last for, I don't remember what it is, 13 years or something like that. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that their exclusivity that they're promised when they bring a drug to market, where there will be no biosimilars available, is 5 years. And so the time starts ticking once they bring that to market. And so just being able to get it to market faster is of huge value for just about any drug, but especially drugs that are sort of novel in what they treat and how they treat it. So first to market, like Carrie says, first to market with a liver fibrosis reversal would be huge. Some folks in the live last night were asking me, hey, Dave, like why don't they get those indications from the FDA? Will they get those indications from the FDA? And when we're talking about liver fibrosis and cirrhosis and treating liver disease, one of the biggest challenges in running these clinical trials, and I know that companies like Eli Lilly are working with the FDA right now to sort of rewrite the rules on how these are done. But when it comes to liver studies, you talk about phase 3 trials, which can have thousands of people in them. They're required to show and prove the liver is actually healing or not being harmed. And to do that, you have to take liver biopsies from people throughout the study. And so what you see is ultimately these become very inefficient from a cost perspective. And so it's very hard to justify the cost of the phase 3 trials in order to bring a drug to market that's, people can actually access and that insurance companies will actually cover. And so Right now, they're trying to find a way to make it so that they can do liver scans instead of biopsies, but all of that takes time. But I'm hopeful that the FDA will move on that and identify a way to really really have a less invasive way to make sure that people's livers are doing what they're supposed to do on these drugs in the clinical trials. And as Neo says, liver biopsies are very painful and come with some risk of complications. So yes, all these things sort of work against getting that indication for liver disease. Sandy said, I hope the threatened 200% pharma tariffs do not happen. I think if you just look at how that has all played out, I think the markets have done pretty well. And so I think it's all leverage without getting too political. Joe says, has there been word on the side effects being observed in the trial? In terms of retatrutide, with the glucagon agonism, really the only thing that you have above and beyond normal GLP-1. And that's why I feel like people are like, hey, we don't want to rush these medications through FDA. First of all, I don't think it's rushing as much as it's just reallocating resources so that they can do it faster. I don't think the process isn't less steps to my understanding. It's actually just reallocating resources to approve other drugs quicker. But to your point, GLP-1s actually are pretty well known and documented what the class of medication does in terms of side effects, at least the peptide versions. So the only thing that you see above and beyond with retatrutide is you do see a little bit of a tick up in heart rate. The heart rate ticks up because glucagon is a cardiac stimulant. So this is like caffeine, right? Caffeine amps your heart up. Nicotine amps your heart up. Glucagon is one of those things that is also a cardiac stimulant that can raise your heart rate. And in doing so, just requires a little bit more surveillance for people. Ultimately, I think that this drug will be shown, like other drugs in this class of medication, and perhaps above and beyond other drugs in this class of medications, to be shown very cardiac protective, right? But definitely in the dose escalation process during the clinical trials, you do see that bump up in heart rate. And because there are so many people taking a form of retatrutide through what we call research grade, not for human consumption, gray market, whatever you want to call it, I do hear a lot of people reporting some pretty gnarly increases in heart rate. On the Retatrial, let's see, Aviation Process, they're on the Retatrial and went up to 8 milligrams and had to stop shortness of breath. Massive skin sensitivity, allodynia. Allodynia, I think, is the name of that. And it is, people who experience that with tirzepatide too, but I've heard it can be pretty gnarly with retatrutide. I've been off for 6 weeks and slowly getting better. Well, I'm sorry that you had to quit that. Curious how you did all the way up to 8 milligrams. Debbie says, selfishly, I'm good with tirzepatide and want to see the price for it come down before the new drugs come out. I do expect to see the prices for these medications to come down. As I was talking about last night, here's what I see happening in the next 6 months, probably. I do see Novo Nordisk making a move to make Wegovy cheaper. In fact, I think all of this nonsense going on with CVS Caremark, preferring Wegovy, dropping Zepbound, moving people to Mounjaro is all about Novo being able to say, hey, we're still king of the hill. It's all a marketing ploy, really, ultimately, so that they can show their investors, hey, Wegovy is still the king of the hill in terms of new scripts, et cetera, et cetera. But they're only going to be able to do that for so long before they actually have to lower the price. They're already tinkering around with that. Last month in June, you saw them lower the price for starting doses to $199. This week or this month, they bumped it up and worked with Weight Watchers at $299. So they're trying to find where that price point is, where they can sustain the growth and sort of leverage everything. So don't kid yourself. What Novo Nordisk is doing right now is a trial run to lower the price of Wegovy. And I firmly believe that we'll see that before the end of 2025 here. Now, once they do that, and it is their move and they need to do it, just to be clear. But I think what we'll see within the next year, sometime in 2026, is I think you will see Eli Lilly then move down a little bit with tirzepatide. And of course, that'll all lead up to the beginning of 2026, where I'm sorry, at the end of 2026, where you'll ultimately see retatrutide, which, can affect things. You also see Boehringer Ingelheim around that same time come out with survodutide. So you have a third company getting into the ring, which is always exciting, right? Because right now it's just Lilly and Novo. You have a duopoly, which is just slightly better than a monopoly because they still can, collude without colluding and agree like this is where our prices are going to be, right? This is good for you, it's good for me. But when you get a third company into the game, that's even better. So Boehringer Ingelheim will be in there. Of course, you've also got CagriSema or Forglipron. You've got, Novo and Lilly are sort of cannibalizing some of their own products, and they'll have to reevaluate pricing as well. So I do think that there's some good news coming in terms of even outside of what the content of this video was at the outset. There is some good news coming in terms of pricing on these medications. And so I'm super excited about that. Let's see, Marlene, welcome. Good to see you here, Marlene. Any idea how much Retatrutide will cost? There's definitely no way to tell that right now. I think it's the $1 million question. I do think it'll come at a higher price point than we saw Tirzepatide come at, because again, you do have sort of this like novel idea of glucagon agonism. It's, there has been another glucagon drug out there, but it wasn't ever for weight loss, wasn't super powerful. I want to say petrolinitide. No, that's not right. It was another tide. Somebody can help me. There was an amylin agonist out there. Or sorry, not amylin. I think I'm getting confused now. I think I'm getting confused with amylin and glucagon. Anyway, glucagon, actually, I believe that glucagon that has existed out there has not necessarily been, it's been for helping people with blood sugar crashes. People are asking me like, why is Retatrutide coming out before for obesity, before type 2 diabetes? And the thing that I say is actually Retatrutide I don't think is going to be as good as Tirzepatide. And I think we've already kind of seen that in some of the early numbers in the earlier clinical trials. It's not going to be as good for lowering your A1C as Tirzepatide is, because that glucagon component, it actually raises your blood sugar. So you do still have the GLP-1 and GIP, so you're sort of counteracting that, but it doesn't have the same great effect on A1C as Tirzepatide does, although it'll still be a diabetes medicine, and it'll still be, one of the best in class diabetes medicine, but it won't eclipse Tirzepatide for its ability to control blood sugars. So Joe says, am I right in remembering that Novos recently increased operations in China? They may be expecting big things from Reta. Now, I'm not sure exactly what Novo has done with their operations in China. I'll just say generally with Novo Nordisk, what you saw towards the end of 2024 was a pretty big push to increase their operations overall. They actually acquired a company called Catalyn, and in acquiring Catalyn, which is one of the world's largest manufacturer of generic drugs, they acquired 2 facilities that they can finish and fill pens with. And so when you talk about the future of their ability to mass produce semaglutide products, CagriSema, and whatever else comes down the line, they are really set up to increase their global operations by that Catalyn deal, which, Novo Holdings purchased Catalyn, but then Novo Nordisk actually netted the finish and fill factories of Catalyn. So that was a crazy deal. I didn't expect it to go through U.S. regulators, but it did, because Catalyn actually holds a bunch of deals with Novo competitors, including Eli Lilly. Catalyn actually helps to make, I believe, when I really got deep into this research last year, I believe that they were really helping to do a lot with the clinical trial drugs for Eli Lilly. And so when this deal was on the table for Novo Nordisk to basically acquire Catalyn, Eli Lilly's over here like, hey, they're making like our secret sauce for us, and now our competitor is going to own them. Like, we don't love that. So it was allowed to go through. So they have done a lot to increase their operations through acquisitions, where you've seen Eli Lilly invest up to $20-30 billion in the United States to make these drugs right here in the United States. Some of that investment is in Indiana. Some of that investment is in Triangle Park, or what do they call it? Triangle Park is Indiana, I think. Whatever they call it in like the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina. And so, like $30 billion, and including manufacturing the active pharmaceutical ingredient right here in the United States. So both companies have been, you saw actually right here in the Midwest, Eli Lilly also acquired a couple companies in Wisconsin. to help make these drugs too. So they're growing as fast as they possibly can, but the resources are finite to build out. And that's why it was such an advantage for these companies to be first to market. Any other questions I'd be happy to take. Otherwise, I'll just give you a reminder that you can sign up for our newsletter at obesity.news. Obesity.news is where you can get our newsletter. If you just type that into your browser, obesity.news. Makes sense, right? And you can just type your email address right into there. You're going to get all of our articles, including the one we did on this video, which was, I did that first thing this morning. You'll get that delivered directly to your email inbox. And then if you want to go a level deeper, you can become a paid subscriber. And that's what's helping us to build all this. Like if you are a Substack subscriber, a paid subscriber for $12.99 a month, you are literally building our thing. This is patient-centric obesity medicine news from the patient perspective. We needed our own place where we could get information that helped us to just have better conversations and better health. So thank you all for being here. Thank you. Good to see you, Spoonie. She says, I miss your lives. Hope all is well. All is going very well. We're getting back to 100%. I hope all is well with you, Spoonie. You're in our thoughts and prayers too, as you battle through your situation there with the cancer coming back. We love you and we appreciate you, and you're in our thoughts and prayers. And so just appreciate everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what we do at On the Pen. Couldn't, wouldn't, and shouldn't do it without you. Until the next one, hit that like, hit that bell, hit that sub, and we'll see you.